leftists, they kind of look at those as almost like low IQ entertainment things, when in reality, right, sport is actually a great outlet for a lot of people to put their energy into. A lot of, working class, middle class, white men across the Western world. I feel like sport is actually a great distraction from them, being put down the right wing pipeline, for them being radicalized by the right. Because if they have sport, I'd much rather, Phil down the road be invested in whether United are going to sign a new coach, or than him to be invested in what's going on with immigration in a negative way. I'd much rather him be putting all this fucking angst and all this vigor into sport more than into politics, or most importantly, problematic politics, because I know you can also put your energy into politics in a positive way, in a left-wing way. But I do feel like the vast majority of the people that are into sport, they'd probably be going down the right-wing line of thinking. Of course, you can't generalise either, because, there are a lot of football teams that take pride in coming from left-wing backgrounds. I mean, even if you look at Celtic, and I'm not on about the Boston Celtics. I actually don't know if the Boston Celtics have any Irish origin. I mean, I presume they do, considering it's in Boston, and Boston is a Irish stronghold in the States. But I'm talking about Celtic in Glasgow, the football team. Basically, they were Irish people that immigrated to Scotland. They were Catholics that immigrated to Scotland. And Celtic, the football club, acted as an outlet for them to support their Catholicism, to be proud of their Irishness. And it's definitely been a good thing. Obviously, on the flip side of that, in sport, you have Rangers, who are a Protestant team. So there's a big rivalry between Catholics and Protestants. But instead of it being a fight between Catholics and Protestants, or people getting stabbed and murdered through this fight between Catholics and Protestants, it's played out on a football pitch, which I think it can only have a positive effect for society. It's much more positive for people to be settling in their differences through sport than to be settling it, through stabbing or through gun violence. So, that's something that I think a lot of leftists there are certain leftists that are stuck up their own ass, that kind of underestimate the power of sport, and how sport can be a good way of not only, distracting people from more serious issues, but can also be a way of kind of bringing people together. Even you'd have a young kid, like a 12 or a 13-year-old, that might not care about race relations, might not care about racism, might not care about any of that, but their favourite footballer might be Vinicius Junior, who plays for Real Madrid. And Vinicius is someone who speaks out about racism a lot. So what you're getting now is you have a 12-year-old, like, say, white kid just in Ireland, who doesn't care about racism. Now his hero, Vinicius Jr., is talking about racism, which means that because of his love of sport, he's now getting an understanding of what it is like to be a person of colour and the discrimination people of colour face. So that's a positive thing as well. These are the things people don't think about when they, just write off sport as being, irrelevant and just capitalistic. Because sport is very capitalistic, and it's hard to know what sport you can fully support nowadays without feeling like you're kind of a part of the problem. Especially the World Cup a few years ago, was held in Qatar. And a lot of sports journalists found that very hard to, within themselves, support that competition, because Qatar is a country that, works a lot, uses a lot of immigrants. They don't pay them well. They use a lot of immigrants from Africa, from other West wealthy Middle Eastern companies, and they didn't pay them. And a lot of people died building the stadiums for the 2022 World Cup. So, there are negative parts of sport when it comes to capitalism, and how, it really, because there's so much money to be made in sport, what's happened is that, people don't matter anymore. And that's why you find a lot of people in general, when it comes to sport, if they are in the left wing, they more support their local teams now. They'll support an Irish team like Shelburne, who just won the Irish League there. They'll support Cork City, a team. I went to a few matches when I was growing up. They'll support their local team in Ireland that don't make that much money because they feel like that's still supporting sport, but still being loyal to your left-wing politics as well. You know, obviously, you'd have a lot of right-wingers say sport doesn't belong in politics. But then they're the first ones, or sorry, politics don't belong in sport. But then they're the first ones to bring up politics when it comes to trans athletes. Like they're the first ones to make a trans woman playing in a women's football team. They make that a political issue. You know, firstly, they don't even care about women's sports, so I don't know why they're all put out about that, but all of a sudden they see here a trans athlete is in their local college swimming team, their local college women's swimming team, and they're all put out about it, and they're all like, oh my God. But I feel like that only reflects how little right-wingers have to be upset about nowadays. I mean, you could be upset about capitalism, the fact that you have to work all these hours for, you know, very little time off, for very little money, very little wealth, the rental crisis, the house of living crisis. But instead you're upset about a trans woman swimming with other women, or a trans woman playing football with other women. Like that just reflects that you're bored because you don't care about women's sport to begin with. You're just using that trans woman as a excuse to be transphobic. And you even find a lot of those people don't even like sport either. I said a lot of leftists don't like sport. A lot of right-wingers don't actually like sport. All they like is hate, really, and that's why they pretend to care about women's sport when a trans athlete is playing in it. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. When I'm watching women's sport, I'm watching it to be inclusive, you know? So if I turn it on and I don't see at least 2 or 3 trans athletes or 2 or 3 non-binary athletes, if, you know, the racial diversity makeup isn't what I would have hoped for, I'm turning that shit off. That's gross. Like, I don't want to watch white feminism sport. Like, no, thank you. And obviously, I'm messing with that a bit. Of course, you can't always get the numbers and get everybody be represented in a sports team. Like, it's kind of hard. But one thing I feel like people have never really talked about is, you know, how the US women's football team are really good at football. But one of the reasons why they're really good at football is because women in the Western world, especially America, are more privileged than women in other worlds. So that's why their football team, very white as it is, are very good at football, but their men's team are very mediocre. You know, it's something that people have never really talked about. You know, when people talk about, I don't like a female sport, I don't like the female American football team. Firstly, if my bro ever called a chick a female, I'd